Just a brief introduction about me. I am Alisha Shail. I'm a clinical psychologist and counselor by profession. I've been working in the field for the last 7 years. Mainly, what I do for work is meet with people with mental health issues, mostly dealing with depression, anxiety, personality disorders. I also deal with a lot of people coming in for testing and assessment. So, if there is a problem and people don't know what that exactly is, to find that out, or what's the best way to guide them forward for therapy, or sometimes people may also need medication. So it's either this or that. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, but I'm very, very glad that all of y'all have joined, and I am ready with the webinar. Is it okay to start with the presentation and share my screen?
Yes, please go ahead, Alisha.
Okay, just going through a few disclaimers and protocols for today. This is just to be mindful of while the session is on, that this is not equivalent to an individual counseling session at any point, and is only meant for awareness purposes. So, as much as we all have our personal concerns and problems, I think that can be addressed in an individual session. So, this is just an awareness session. Any general guidelines that I may discuss here in the webinar should not be taken as direct medical advice. Visiting your psychiatrist, your psychologist, or mental health counselor for your personal issues is absolutely recommended. Of course, there are any questions at the end of the webinar, then that can be addressed, and I will be more than happy to answer those. If any topic feels triggering to you, you have the choice to leave the webinar and connect back when you are comfortable to connect. This is just a protocol so that we make sure this doesn't become like a reason or a trigger for anybody's mental health. Um, Again, I would like that this becomes an interactive presentation, and all answers can be given voluntarily in the chat box to me or to the presenters as well. So the first pointer that I want to make today is that most of us we actually join new workout routines and gyms and probably Pilates and fitness classes, and we talk about it with our coworkers and colleagues, don't we? Which means that most of us are really comfortable talking about, oh, this is a new class that I have joined, and this is what it's working on my muscles, or it's working on this particular body part, and this is how it's making me feel. It's making me feel good, bad. I'm still struggling with my physical fitness, etc. The point is that this is more so spoken about, and this is about physical health. Which brings me to the question that how many of us really speak about visiting a therapist or a counselor for their mental fitness and talk about it with coworkers and colleagues. This is something I want you guys to put an answer to this in the chat box. I won't be able to view it currently, but this is something I will go through at the end of the session. More so, the data or the recent surveys tell us that more so people don't speak about these issues, which means mental fitness and physical fitness both have been dealt with very, very differently, even though they're both part of health, physical health and mental health. But both are equally important and correlated to each other very, very differently. The physical one is spoken about, to name a few physical issues. This is again something that would have been interactive. But to name a few physical issues, it would be diabetes, hypertension, somebody has a heart illness, or somebody's taken off from work for physio, or is having any knee issues. Those are all your physical illnesses, and those are spoken about. In fact, there are some companies who actually provide assistance through those physical processes. But when it comes to mental health, people don't even open up or talk about it, or let another colleague know that, hey, I'm having a bad day, or I need some assistance here, or I'm stuck with something, I'm struggling with something, and more or so those concerns are not addressed. Point being, both are equally important, and they're correlated to each other. Physical health and mental health, when the gap is reduced between the two, that's how your entire well-being would look like. But yeah, when the gap increases is when we need to address those mental health concerns. Okay, we'll come to the main discussion of today. It's mental health stigma. Um, understanding stigma is very, very important. I'm just going to highlight a few things. Now, this webinar is specific to workplace. So I'm going to highlight a few things about mental health stigma at workplace and explaining that concept briefly. It's a societal disapproval or when society places shame on people who live with a mental illness or seek help for emotional distress, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, or PTSD. There are many other mental health illnesses which are work related as well. Now, given how common it is for people to experience a decline in mental health, especially post pandemic, when people have started, addressing or talking about it a little much more than how it was before, still the level of stigma that exists in society is surprising and often contradictory. It's like, okay, I'm dealing with so many mental health issues and they have only increased in the pandemic years, but still the stigma is often there. So individuals hide their conditions. There is feeling of shame. It leads to avoidance of treatment or inadequate care. Stigma means being seen as abnormal. In short terms, this word abnormal, now I personally have a problem with the word abnormal, and psychiatric treatments are often viewed with suspicion. There is no demarcation of what's normal, what's abnormal. Everybody has their own issues to deal with. But yeah, stigma means you're attaching a label to somebody and you're categorizing them as someone or something that is abnormal. Stigma oftentimes comes with stereotypes. It starts from stereotypes itself. For example, people living with depression are often stereotyped as lazy, while some judge those with anxiety as cowardly. Whereas those are the symptoms that you deal with in those issues. Now, lack of awareness, education, perception, and a fear of people with mental illness can all lead to increased stigma. Now, mental health and outcomes. A recent survey explains about 75% of employees in US have struggled with an issue that affected their mental health. Yet 8 out of 10 workers with a mental health condition say shame and stigma prevent them from seeking mental health care. That's a problem for individuals, but it's also a problem for employers because untreated mental health conditions cost companies heavily every year. So the untreated mental health conditions will lead to absentism, presentism, all of that is also going to affect the work culture. So it's not only loss of the person who's dealing with the issue, but it's also a loss of the employer at workplace. Okay, let's look at some of the common issues due to stigma. The common issues that you can compromising your work relationships, or even some people think that they're going to lose their jobs if they open up about this. There is internalization of negative beliefs. There is social isolation, which happens. Now, internalization of negative beliefs is when people start thinking that, oh, this is if I'm dealing with depression, and depression is how it's going to be forever, or they've internalized their issues and now they've made it about themselves rather than also seeing that the system is at play. So that's the internalization and the negative thinking that starts from there. Social isolation, where there are people who you really want to connect with, but you feel like if you open up about it, you really can't, and there's going to be a judgment or a stigma associated. So that leads to social isolation, where even though you're with a crowd, you feel like you can't open up about these issues, and then you're isolating yourself. It leads to low self-esteem, hopelessness. There is shame involved. Avoiding treatment completely due to stigma. It's like, imagine if this mental health was not stigmatized, so many people would open up and talk about it, and it would be treated as any other treatment. It's like if I have a I honestly have like a running cold today. And if I'm open about it, I can go to the GP and go to the doctor and say, oh, this is my problem today. I need medications for that. But if I can't open up about it, I'm going to avoid going to a doctor completely, which leads to, again, worsening of symptoms. There is a fear of discrimination at work. People are going to judge you differently, going to look at you differently. That's stigma. Sometimes people fear unemployment as well, as we've discussed in the first pointer. Having a mental health issue at work decreases productivity or your quality of work. It increases absentism or presentism. Why I've highlighted that in red is because I'm going to explain those two concepts on a different slide in detail. Withdrawing from social activities at work, changes in eating or sleeping habits that could occur, trouble concentrating or focusing, and increased stress or anxiety. What is absentism and presentism? Try to escape work and they don't want to show up to work, which is a common phenomena, but we don't often talk about presentism. So I'm going to highlight both here. Now, absentism is when employees aren't present at work, and presentism when employees are present at work but they aren't working. Yeah, both the issues need to be highlighted because both are related to mental health conditions. Now, absentism, I'm going to go a little bit into detail. You're absent while you're ill. It is easier to quantify it, lower economic costs, and downward yearly trend. That's the result of it. In presentism, you're present while you're ill, but you're less productive. Difficult to quantify this, how it's going to work. A higher economic costs and upward yearly trend. Yeah, and when employees are disengaged, they're absent completely. When employees have higher workloads, this leads to the presentism. So absentism is when you're um, so mentally stressed that leads to be an understanding that okay, I cannot show up for work, and this is these are the reasons why I'm just going to skip it without having a conversation, without having to put it in front of the employers that I'm struggling with something. So that is absentism. And presentism, on the other hand, is because I'm so stressed about work or there's a heavy workload that I cannot even afford to take a leave. So both result, at the end of the day, both result in decreased productivity overall. Um, so absenteeism goes up when there's disengagement, physical and mental illness along with it, and it goes down when there is strong absence policy in place and attendance tracking is there. Presentism goes up when there is a heavy workload or lack of job security, and it goes down when there is strong management and well-being at work is promoted. That can be avoided. Now I'm just going to give you a gist of the rates and the costs. Now this is a survey done with US and UK. So there are these numbers here which are very self-explanatory. It talks about the yearly average of unscheduled absent days per employee, absenteeism rate, the cost of presentism per year, and the cost of absenteeism per employee each year, which you can see with numbers, with rates and costs. Um, a gist, just a brief gist of how to fight this problem. We've listed the problem and how to fight this specific issue. One thing that can be done at the workplace is to understand the financial effect of the absences. Once you kind of have like a statistical analysis of that, it becomes very clear how it would be easy to understand, and probably something can be done about it. Again, promoting a work-life balance for presentism. If you have a work-life balance, I think the whole workload or the stress that comes with it can be avoided. Implementing a clear health sick day policy again prevents the presentism and encourage health and wellness in general at workplace. Improve the culture and workplace morale as well. So yeah, these are a couple of pointers how to avoid both of these issues. I'm going to the mental health and media part now. These are two very, I wouldn't say surprising, two very eye-opening comments. There's one comment made by our almost ex-president now, but there's one comment made by him, and then there is an article that was written. So I'm just going to read the brief of the article. Time for Indian companies to take employees' well-being seriously. While diversity may be a buzzword to aspire to for most employers, it doesn't translate into hiring practices when it comes to individuals with mental health issues. So basically, this article, I've given like a reference or a reading link at the end. You all can of course go through it. Speaks about how diversity is inclusive in company culture, but mostly people with mental health issues when it comes to practices for hiring purposes, I think there is some setback or there is some work that needs to be done. So First Culture Post had put down this article, and then when President Ramnath Kovind delivered the 22nd convocation address at NIMHANS, which is a famous university in Bangalore, in December 2017, he pointed out that the number of people in India suffering from mental health issues was greater than the population of Japan. He warned that India could soon be facing a mental health epidemic, one that it doesn't have the resources to adequately address. So most of the mental health problems, there are only those many areas of your life. One is self, one is family, one is your friendships, and most important chunk is your work. So most of the issues are going to stem from all of these areas. So that was mental health and media for you. Now, the most important thing to look at while we're discussing this today in the webinar is what signs do you look out for to recognize the mental health issues at workplace? Now, everyone is going to show you a different sign. Now, how do we get the awareness that somebody would be dealing with something like this? One is the people who can look out for signs, and two is if this is destigmatized and people can start opening up and talking about it as well. But while that's still in process, while that work is still being done, what are the signs that you can look out for to recognize mental health issues at workplace? Now, here I've given you 11 early symptoms of mental health illness, which are general symptoms, and then I have given you specific symptoms at workplace. So the general symptoms are concentration problems, feeling sad, excessive fears or worries, extreme mood changes, sleeping problems, sometimes paranoia, that feeling that everything is working against you or everything is about you, inability to cope with stress, excessive use of alcohol or drugs. If you've seen any friend or a colleague whose patterns have been very, very extreme of late, or there is sudden spike in substance use or anything like that, that could be one of the signs. Major changes in eating habits, anger management issues, or even suicidal thinking to some point. Now, I'm going to make this more work specific, which means at workplace, what are the signs that you can look for? At workplace, most often the signs that people show are the tiredness or headaches, prone to making silly mistakes in work along with a fall in productivity, getting easily irritated and inversely complacent all the time, messed up working hours, basically being there's no work-life balance, with them being distracted during the day and working till late night or early in the morning. Also, they might be working much more than them again occurs at a high rate on their part. So these are a couple of signs to look out for at workplace. Now, when we're looking at signs, we're going to address what can we do. Now, as leaders, as managers, as employers, as corporates, as workplaces, what can we do to address some of these concerns? Now, when we talk about what we can do, there is nothing major or out of the box that we need to look at. These are very, very simple, basic guidelines that, if followed and implemented properly, I think there is still a scope or a conversation that can be had about it. And of course, it will lead to betterment and well-being of the employers and the employees. Leaders, managers need to speak about mental health issues so they can model that better for their employees. So let's say at a leader level or a manager level, I am opening about my mental health issue. That will also encourage my subordinate to open up about theirs. And then this way, it can be a conversation. There is some solution to it rather than it being completely stigmatized. Why it's important to speak about it? Because you can't see it. Yeah, so mental health issues are not something that are always going to be visible. The headaches, sure. The fatigue, sure. Body pain, sure. But they're not always going to be visible. That's why it's important to speak about it. Providing mental health resources or professional help. Each company can have like a resource list or they can provide professional help when required. Building a healthy and supportive culture without stigma, we already did that. Creating an outlet where people mingle with each other even out of work. You're just changing space in a different place, something like that as well. Encouraging employees to take breaks when required, building a wellness program to create a positive culture, hold play activities, enrichment for other cultures in general, and providing a platform for discussion. Something like what we're doing today. This is exactly what it means by providing a platform or launch employee assistant program along with that, where you have like a counselor, mental health professional on board who can really assess all of the mental health issues of the employees. Conversations in general. So this need not be anything particular, but conversations around mental health. When you're talking about depression, when you're talking about anxiety, Of course, not using those words very, very loosely. First, being very well educated about what these terms are, and then having healthier conversations around those. And the most important part, what we can do if we are a part of the workplace culture, is to accept that work-life balance is going to be the utmost important step for a better mental health. Now, here I want to highlight more about work-life balance and just give a gist of how that would look like. Um, Again, this is an interactive question, so feel free to respond to this in the chat box. I can see it later. How many of us respond to emails, messages, and texts? 9 to 5 is your allotted work time, or the 9 to 6. There are some times where things are urgent and all. But if this becomes a daily practice and you get used to just replying to text when it's not even urgent after work hours, is when there is a problem. Means the work-life balance somewhere is dawdling, and we need to kind of correct that. And checking our work phones first thing in the morning, which means that there has been no time to breathe or ground yourself. The first thing that we've done is picked our phones in the morning and we've gone ahead with it. So these two are markers of how work-life balance kind of gets disrupted. Again, what we can do about it: setting boundaries at work. I can give you my personal example. I used to struggle with work-life balance, and about boundaries at work is having a particular found a solution for it. It's my work phone and my personal phone. It's my work SIM and my personal SIM. Keeping those separate so that I can only access that for those particular hours. After that particular hour that I have set for myself, I won't be picking up calls. Of course, if there is something urgent, it can be addressed. But if something that can wait, that can go to the next day, goes to the next day. So that's just simple boundaries with my phone. Similarly, boundaries can be established with work timings, it can be established with conversations you have, it can be established with the work you do on your laptop at your home. So if you're working from home, build your schedule as if you're going to the office, which means you open up your laptop at a particular time and you shut your laptop at a particular time, and anything beyond that will go to the next day unless it's urgent. And that urgency analysis has to be done properly. Not everything becomes urgent, even though it may become urgent in our head, which needs to be worked on. Overwhelming, you've noticed yourself just spending time with devices, probably like doing like a cell phone detox, spending more time in nature definitely would help. Prioritizing sleep, because that is literally the most important step or the most important reason. Everything is related to that. Scheduling time for personal and professional development, which means even our work, some personal goals, the professional goals that you have, removing time for those is going to create a balance between work and life. And hobbies for regulation outside of work. So even though I'm a psychologist, I love art, I love painting, and removing time for those things as well, because that is something that adds value to work. Here is the point where I'm going to show you a small video.
Affecting our mental and physical health. COVID-19 has shone a light on workplace mental health, particularly for those working on the front lines, health, emergencies, and humanitarian workers.
But what the pandemic has made visible is what health and social sector workers have been doing for years. They do this with smiling faces, but behind this face, a lot are battling mental health issues rising from work.
We always work under unstable and challenging situations, and we also witness the human suffering in natural and man-made disasters. This may cause immediate stress to us, but in some cases, it may also create some long-term mental health impact.
At times, I did find it difficult to stay positive, to stay motivated, and of course, the subjects to work.
We had been affected severely in terms of mental health. We had to cope up with anxiety, stress, and fear.
Medicine is tough. It demands a lot out of you, emotionally, intellectually, physically.
The stress levels in relation to disrupted work environment and also disrupted personal life and having to work from home has also negatively impacted on mental health in our work.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining. The experience I've had is that once you start talking about experiencing a mental health struggle, you realize that actually you're a part of quite a big club, which was said by Prince Harry. And Mariska said healing takes time and asking for help is a courageous step. So yeah, that's about the mental health at workplace. And here is a little bit about me. If you guys want, you can like click a picture of this for details or even message me privately on the chat bot. And yes, here are a couple of the references and the readings for you. I will also paste the link of the video so that you guys can watch it. And I am up to take any questions if there are in the chat box. Yeah.
So we've got one question in the chat, in the Q&A box. And I would encourage everyone, if you have any questions, please put it here. You can put them anonymously as well. In my current work, I am not happy with what I am doing. It's been 5 years here. I am actually happy with the work, but seeing some aversion towards my colleagues, work environment and treatment. Is it just me getting bored of work or something else? What can I do to understand this?
It's important to examine what at work is really something which is triggering, whether it is the colleagues, whether it is the environment. If there is something that's triggering that can be spoken about, or there's a conversation that can be had about it with somebody as a trusted resource at work that you can trust and talk about it too, then that can happen. If there is something that you need to sit with yourself and figure, which means that you also don't know what exactly is triggering over there. If there is something that you're seeing your colleagues do or talk about or behave in a certain way, is there anything that personally is a problem for you? That can be addressed with a mental health professional. So going for a session with a counselor, that would be a good idea. If that is step two, if the initial conversation doesn't resolve it at work. If this is colleagues specific. Yeah.
So there's another question here. Apart from speaking to someone, are there any other solutions to this that can be proactively taken up on your own?
I think the part that we discussed about work-life balance, that is proactively taking it up on your own, which means nobody else is going to take accountability of how you would like to divide your work and your personal leisure time, and that's completely your accountability. That would definitely help with mental well-being in general, which means setting boundaries at work and navigating how you want to do it yourself. Most people struggle with accountability, though, even though they know that they can set up something for themselves, they don't know if that's something that they can stick to. So there's a lot of derailment that happens. एक दो दिन try किया उसके बाद you've forgotten what you have to do. Usually what people do with this kind of a system is keep accountability buddies. So for example, I have planned something for my work schedule. I may have a friend or two and just keep them in loop so they can keep checking in with whether I'm actually sticking to it or not. Or if you have a confidant, a mentor, a friend who you can share your new routine with, they can keep you accountable for it as well. But yeah, these are a couple of things that you can do for yourself. So the slide that highlighted the work-life balance, I think that's completely on an individual.
Apart from speaking to someone, are there any other solutions to this that can be proactively taken by on your own?
Apart from speaking to someone, I think what I highlighted was a work-life balance slide. That was the one that is a self-accountable slide, which means that you can set your boundaries accordingly. And if you're struggling with accountability, you can also set up an accountability buddy who will make sure that there is accountability given. If you're introducing your new routine to somebody can keep you accountable for it. And do like a weekly check-in, a monthly check-in, whether you're on par with it.
Right, that makes a lot of sense actually. Another question we have here is how to stay positive at work when someone is negative around you.
Very important question, Didi. Your work background or your work culture or how people are treating you is definitely going to affect if somebody else is negative. What you may want to do is there's a technique called compartmentalization, which means that the minute you step into work, there is a little bit of grounding done. See, these are circumstances which are out of your control. Now, you can't control what the other person is going to do. Well, what you can control is how much you let that affect you.
Right.
right? So the minute you step into work, there is a grounding, there is a preparation that you already do, that this is something that I can't change about my workplace currently till that changes by itself, and then deal with it smoothly. And the minute you're leaving work, just before leaving work, there is a grounding done as well, which is I'm leaving all of this here. Now I'm not going to drag it
Right.
back at home. Right? So you're compartmentalizing the entire issue. That is one way to look at it, of how you can kind of, detach from the work environment. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a very, very good technique for anyone, who faces negativity at work from somebody else, reason being any. You could, just kind of what happens at work, just leave it there and kind of compartmentalize. It's very, very good technique. Another question that we have here is, what is a first aid kit for mental health? So if the situation arises, what is it that we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not waiting till the last minute to search for your first aid kit, I think that's what's important. So we're not going to wait till we injure ourselves and then go and hunt for a band-aid. What we're going to do is we're going to keep that preventive measure going on. So that would be your first aid kit for mental health. And in the preventive measure, what it includes is your sleep routine, what you're eating, how you've been feeling. If you've not been feeling well, you talk about it. Don't wait till it gets worse. A couple of those things. There's a lot of research that has now been done about movement and mental health, right? So just moving your body, getting endorphins released. Those are called happy hormones for a reason. You release happy hormones, and those actually help you. It's serotonin. So it would help you feel better. So yeah, keeping your routine going on, along with it, just having those resources. Again, creating space. If you feel like you need to talk to somebody, don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out and see if it helps you, and if it doesn't help, you can always stop. So having an open outlook to mental health approaches, yeah, that could be overall your first aid.
Great. We've got another question here. How would one differentiate if it's a mental state imbalance or just indiscipline in work that's causing distress?
That's an interesting question. So your indiscipline in work is also rooted somewhere, right? So finding that issue first. So if there's an indiscipline that's happening, why is it happening? Has anything changed in the background? Has there been a problem? Have you seen yourself feeling differently? That will also be connected to something related to mental health. Addressing that first and then finding if this is a mental health issue or actually we're struggling with motivation or any other issue, right? So yeah, finding the root cause of where the indiscipline is coming from. And
Right.
Can there be a solution for that first?
Okay, great. So another question has just come in. How to increase your productivity when you are facing a mental health issue?
Okay, this is my favorite question of the webinar, because I feel like your productivity is going to be so subjective from day to day. What most of us do is we think about productivity in a level either or. It's like या तो 100% productivity देना है या तो zero हो जाएगा. It's not like that, right? Every day when you wake up, you can assess how much energy you have for things. So if you feel like your productivity level today is at a 60 and that's also your max, that is productive enough. Right? So assessing it in that way with your mental health. If you know we're dealing with depression, let's say some people who are actually on medications, there are lots of side effects that people face with. So that will definitely interfere with your productivity. But it has to be an analysis of each day, what are you bringing to the table, and not that, okay, my 100% productivity on Monday was this much, matlab I need to sustain the entire week on that level of productivity. That can dawdle a bit, but at the same time, that's productive enough. So I think the self-kinder narrative here works.
Right. So
and of course, assessing your productivity each day if you can do more or less.
Correct. So I think you need to just check in with yourself. How can you, and how much productivity can you give in today? Like some days would be good and some days would be not that good. So
yeah, and which also means that the outcome might still be the same. You might feel like you've given in more on.
Correct. I agree. Yeah. So I think just take it at your own pace is what the outcome of this question could come.
Yes,
Right.
yes, absolutely.
Another questions just come in. Also, however disciplined and good at planning one is, what if the colleagues aren't disciplined and causing distress beyond your control? How to check in with them?
Having an environment where you can have a one-on-one conversation with your colleagues, very, very important, which means conversations which are about work, which are not about work, having that kind of culture where you can relate to that person completely. And if you can't develop that, can that be addressed also in a conversation? That I feel like there is a barrier, I feel like there is a wall, I need to connect with y'all, but I'm not getting an outlet. Yeah, the point that I was making was having a conversation with those same colleagues about the discomfort that you're facing. Oftentimes we shy away from having that conversation, right? It's like, oh, but I can't connect with them.
Correct.
But what are we doing about the disconnection? Are we just going to sit and talk about that we can't connect with them? Or do we want to tell them that I want to connect with you, but I'm struggling with connecting with you?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. I wanted to ask you one question. Is that how can we, be there for someone in a work from home situation? I mean, first of all, it's very difficult to identify also. I mean, if when you're working in a workplace or in an office, you tend to, see the signs which you mentioned in your presentation also. I mean, there is a possibility of seeing those signs, but in a situation like a work from home, where chances of having, anxiety or some sort of unfounded sadness is more, how do you kind of, take care of that and identify that?
Identifying mental health situations or issues or conditions at work is still like, okay, you have a resource system probably available, people can see you come in and out and it's observable.
Correct.
So very good question, Jyoti. When you're working from home, again, when you're setting up a system of work from home, you already know that the people who you're going to meet and see every day are probably going to be the people you stay with, right? So then education about signs and symptoms of mental health for your family and your caregivers, or if you're staying with in a rented space with somebody else, people need to be in touch with each other. Again, the pointer that I had made about social isolation, that's the pointer that we need to highlight here. That if we're totally getting isolated just working from home, we need to switch up something over there.
Right, right.
People have found different ways of dealing with this issue in the pandemic. People have gone to coffee shops. In fact, I know some of my colleagues where Starbucks has become their workspace completely because they needed to see people every day just
Right.
going in and out. Right?
Correct.
They didn't want to just sit home alone and work. So yeah, depending on what works for you, either it's changing space or either just being in loop with people who know that you're working from home so that they can also help you out if there is anything that
That's
you
a very
need.
good thing, and I think for all of the HRs or employers who are attending this event, I would also say that we could look at a hybrid working model, which could be like some days work from home and some days work from office, so that that social anxiety is kind of taken care of here. All right, so one question's just come in.
Sure.
Before we wrap up, can feeling guilty cause a mental state imbalance?
Feeling guilty as an emotion, I work from a space of not labeling emotions positive or negative. I work from a space of just accepting all emotions how they are. So even though guilt, anger, shame, doubt, all of those are called negative emotions, so to call them negative, but at the same time they're telling you something about yourself as well, right? And there is something
Right.
that you need to tap on there. So if this is guilt, because this is a general question, I won't go into detail of it, but if it's guilt relating to a particular instance or a situation, then that personally can be addressed with a counselor in a session, and then you can dig deeper into where it's coming from and what you can do about it.
Thank you everyone who's attended this event today on a Saturday, and thank you so much, Alisha, for taking out the time and speaking to us on this important topic. I think all of us really need to discuss this at workplace and make it less of a taboo and destigmatize it, like I said. So thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
so
attending.
much. It was my pleasure. I was very happy to be here, and thank you, Ensure, my team, for hosting such an event. I mean, I love hearing about these kind of events that companies are doing this, and this is commendable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone, and have a great
Take care.
weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.